Welcome to the Spoiler Alert podcast with your host, Nate Krenz, and co-host,
Your more
Dakota Scott.
significant host, Dakota.
The more
Scott.
significant host, really. Yep.
Yes.
But yeah, today, the movie we're going to be reviewing is going to be David Fincher's Alien 3. It's obviously the third
He's
installment.
disowned it. So is that a sign of disrespect? Like,
I don't know.
there's
He has
no
a lot of...
escaping it. It's like Piranha 2 for James Cameron. Like, just never let him live it down. Be like,
well...
this is...
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he disowned it. Like, just knowing I don't know. I think it's a good movie. Like, it's decent, but it's more well known for its hiccups in production than almost
When
anything.
I think of a production nightmare, I think of Alien 3. Like, that's like the first thought I have.
I mean, like, I think of like Apocalypse Now, and Apocalypse Now is like a masterpiece.
Okay, yeah.
Apocalypse Now is a masterpiece. Alien 3, like, people can walk away with it being like, okay, it was good. I liked it, but no one's given it the masterpiece clout, I don't think.
Yeah, it's gotten some slightly more sympathetic reviews in recent years, but it's definitely nobody's been ballsy enough to be like, it's the best one. Like, nobody's. There are a lot of stupid clickbaity titles, but there's been enough common sense to avoid that one, you know?
If anyone listening to this hasn't seen an episode before, we do talk about the ending at our own behest throughout this podcast. Yeah. So there's going to be
fairly self-explanatory.
Yep. There's going to be spoilers. I mean, I'd like to think that our title, Spoiler Podcast, could cover that every time, but I still feel like we should explain it. Maybe I'll stop explaining.
Maybe we'll gain the confidence to just, but until we figure out a definite structure, it feels like, maybe we should explain it, just because who knows.
But yeah, so we'll be bringing up the ending in this movie, like, even like just part way through this podcast. And if you figure like, hey, I want to see this movie, like to listen to these guys after, that's great. We just encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe. Yes, let's just get it away. Alien 3 kicks off immediately after the events following Aliens, which is the second in the chronological order.
It's not quite immediate, but I think if they had covered that space of time, it'd be really fucking boring because they're all in cryosleep.
I've always been confused as to like how there was another facehugger on board.
And everybody is. So
did they ever actually explain it? Is there like deep-rooted like alien wiki like information on this, you know?
I don't know that there is, but I know that I've been a very big fan of William Gibson's script, but only recently because William Gibson had written short stories that were the premise of both films. He ended up doing one of the earlier iterations of Alien 3 that, in fact, Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen just did an audible drama adaptation of his original script. So it's them doing the voices of Hicks and Bishop. It's about 2.5 hours long. I own it because, but that was a potential follow-up. And a lot of people were like really excited about that. They did a graphic novel adaptation before the audible drama. And because it didn't kill off Hicks, it didn't kill off, Bishop, and it didn't kill off Newt. And a lot of people were very sore about that point. So it was like, and it kind of dealt in like Cold War themes and tensions and stuff. But anyway, it was, that was what a lot of people wanted Alien 3 to be, but instead we got David Fincher's Alien 3. In the William Gibson adaptation, it's explained and it works a lot better as an audio drama because we don't see it. So in the audio drama, they say that the alien queen in Aliens, what would you call it? Well, I don't know, injected, stung Bishop with a egg. But, as far as like when she impales him and rips him in half, which, if you've seen Aliens, you're like, okay, well, that's not what I saw. I saw her ripping him in half with a fucking tail. But they go with, okay, she implanted her last egg in Bishop and then it grows in him. In the Audible drama, they kind of recount the ending of Aliens as a film, and they kind of rework things a little bit. It's almost a bit of a retcon and say, oh yeah, she put that egg in there. And that's their explanation. In Alien 3, there are so many questions as to the aliens' reproductive cycle. I get really fucking confused. Like the film we have, like the face hugger seems to have planted, two eggs, so one within Ripley and then another within either the dog or the bovine. And it's like, I thought they only could plant one because in Alien, we see that the face hugger's dead after John Hurt's character, is right. So that was confusing,
Well, that could be the result of just, production hell, basically. Like, we need to wrap this up. We need to find a fitting ending for Ripley. Sigourney Weaver doesn't want to do another Alien, so
is that definitive, or was that just a general sense of things? Because that's what I kind of gathered.
I went through like a good amount of the special features, and in like the box set that I own, it goes into how Sigourney Weaver went into the production not wanting to do another Alien after this, and she barely wanted to do this.
That makes sense, because with the William Gibson script, he writes her out. Basically, Ripley's in cryosleep. So worst case scenario, they don't even have to show her at all. She's there, but she's in cryosleep for the whole film. So
right.
That makes sense. And that was like one of the earlier scripts.
So that's why they were like, all right, let's just kill her off in Alien 3. Let's kill her off. Let's give her a good ending, blah, 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 blah.
That makes a lot more sense then. Yeah, because I was like, I didn't know if they just didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They're like, they panicked and killed her off, or if it was, I know Sigourney was kind of back and forth about it. So like, but yeah, if it was definitively, she's like, I really don't even want to do 3, then that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think it was planned for, like the fashion of the death was planned for. Like, I think they always wanted it to be a chest burster because like, I mean, her biting the dust to just like an alien tail or something ripping her apart is a little anticlimactic, and she's like,
that's almost people feel about Alien 3 as a whole, but I disagree. True. But that's the sentiment,
I do think the ending to Alien 3 lends it more to like the sort of mother themes that you got in Alien 2, and the mother themes that like she had like a connection. I'm glad you're going to talk about those,
because this is what I felt. Yeah.
So, like I dig the ending. Special effects are super rushed, but who am I to talk?
Yeah, especially coming off of Cameron, though, who had like cutting edge effects for Alien.
Oh, that was another thing too, is right as they were building like the set for like, and they were planning on like, she'll jump into the molten lead or whatever it is, or like the flaming inferno.
I heard that one was rushed. Yeah.
Well, while they were doing that, they were like, oh, guess what, guys? Judgment Day has a fucking iron ore scene. Just imagine being all, like, I mean, as hype as you can be on the Alien 3 set.
Right, and then T2 steals your thunder.
Yeah,
right.
And
no,
they
I know.
come out 1 year before. Yeah. I don't know.
Actually, wait, T2? I thought T2 was 92 as well. It was 91?
It was 91. It was 1 year before.
Oh,
so yeah, Alien 3 was fucked from the beginning. Even if it was like really, 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 really good, it would be fucked. Like it wouldn't have made its money back.
I heard it didn't do too bad financially, but like it, reception wise, like it did well internationally, I guess. So that's what I remember.
We're still not 100% sure how everybody gets infected, because we don't really see Sigourney get infected, and we don't really see the dog get infected. And in a special edition cut, it's a cow, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to talk about. So it's like maybe we should separate, because there's so many differences between the theatrical cut and the assembly cut, and it's really easy to look at that assembly cut, which so I remember a number of years ago, I came in and I watched the assembly cut, not having watched Alien 3 since I was like a fucking kid. You know, I mean, a kid, like fucking fire. I had a fucked up childhood. I love fucking Alien and Terminator and The Thing, but I hadn't. I'm trying to think how many years ago this was. I watched the assembly cut. I was like, it's messy, but it's not that bad of a film. And then I think the only time I fucking returned to the theatrical cut in the interim has been just now. And I'm like, okay, I get why people fucking hate this. Like, I mean, like, it's not even that the content is so different. There are definitely differences, but it's the tone, it's the editing and the music is the primary difference between the theatrical cut and the assembly cut. And the theatrical cut, I don't know if it intends to be disrespectful, but it fucking is. And I totally get why people would be fucking pissed off. The assembly cut doesn't fix all that, but it does fix editing and musical problems. And that's why I think people respect it a lot more, because it's more quiet, it's more contemplative, it takes its time, and it doesn't tell you how you're supposed to feel about a scene. So it doesn't go, oh, you're supposed to be scared. Oh, you're like, there are cheap kind of gore effects during like the newt dissection, that there's a musical cue accompanying, and then I think there's a prisoner who literally yawns. And I think that's still in the assembly cut, but because we have so little music in the assembly cut, you're not told how to feel about that scene. It's just kind of depressing. Whereas in the theatrical cut, it's like tension. Oh, it's so gross that we're dissecting nude, and then the guy's like yawning, like, oh, no big deal. And then there's another line at the very start of the film about Hicks, where somebody just starts fucking laughing. Hicks is like ripped apart, and somebody's like, it's like, it just feels completely like disrespectful and psychotic. And like, I get why people were fucking pissed going back to the theatrical cut. Because when I think of Alien 3, I think of that assembly cut, and I don't blame anybody like in the theater for being fucking pissed.
Yeah, so I have not seen the assembly cut. I probably should have done that for homework for this episode.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that's helpful, because like that's the version I think of. And so if you've seen the theatrical cut, yeah, like I get why people are pissed. So
yeah, so
I'm not saying it's different enough to justify the whole film, but it's different enough where I think it is respectable. Maybe.
We're gonna get more into like some of the things that were like going against Alien 3 from the jump, whether it was rewrites all the way to the fucking end, and like bringing in a great director, but it's still a director's first film. So like, you can't.
There were great first films for directors, but yeah, this was a nightmare. I think it shows how great David Fincher is. I try not to look at it as a David Fincher film because I feel like that's cheating. Like you don't want to be like, okay, it's David Fincher, so by virtue it's good. But this was a hell production. And the fact that he was able to juggle any of this is absolutely fucking amazing. Like, and come out with a film that, well, okay, it's not great, but it's, I think, ultimately respectable if you look at that assembly cut. So, but
yeah, I also don't think casting is a problem in this film at all. Like,
no,
like,
well, the cast is good, but I think what was alienating is is the heavy accents. Obviously, I mean, I watch a lot of British films and television, whatever, and like, it's not an issue for me, but I think for the average audience, you do have to consider that these are pretty thick accents. There were also kind of audio mixing problems I noticed when I went back and watched the theatrical cut, and things come through clearer, but the accents, they actually feel, it's a bizarre phenomenon where the accents feel thicker in some scenes, and like in the assembly cut, things feel more naturally mixed into the background audio, and in a weird way, even though they're not as loud, they're easier to make out. I don't know if that makes any sense. Yeah, I think for the average American audience member, whatever, in the theater, those accents might have come, especially because I think your first taste of it is the warden. I don't know his name, but maybe I'm not remembering right the difference between the theatrical and the assembly, but it feels thicker, a lot thicker in the theatrical. And maybe that's just because it's more jarring and it's not slowly introduced. But yeah, I know it sounds petty and whatever, but for the average audience member, it could have been distracting and confusing.
No, you have a point there, because like there was actually one character who, in like the special featurette or whatever that you watch, and it's all about how these actors had like a hell time on set. This one character, or this one actor, I should say, was explaining how for one scene, like his character was like kind of like the
Yeah, I know what you're
was like
talking about. Yeah.
the schizophrenic guy where like
Yeah.
Charles Dance's blood was all over his face. He explained it like a Charles Manson like voice, where
Was it me? It's like a squealing pig. It's like, was it me? It was and then, yeah, I remember that. It's
and
very
Dylan leaves the room, and it's just Ripley there, and he turns to her and he's just like just got some cockney, and like what and
well, yeah, I think he described it as a Liverpool accent, so sort of Tim Rothy. I don't even know if he's from Liverpool, but he must be. I mean, because yeah, I think they just chalked that up to, well, he's crazy. He just speaks in tongues. He's all over the fucking place. But yeah, it can be a bit jarring. But I think internationally people don't have as good of an ear for that, so they're like, fuck it,
And you can see legitimately, like, if you put yourself in the shoes of a viewer in 1992, you do see very different kind of stylized shots from Fincher, where there's a lot of high angle shots where people at home, if you don't know what a high angle shot is where the camera's actually low to the ground, angled up.
Nowhere-ish kind of, right?
Yeah, where you have a lot of that in noir, because like you get a lot of harsh shadows, and shadows that strikes to my mind is like black and white, like kind of shadow, almost like comic book look. But yeah, like there's a lot of high angle shots. There's a lot of like unique edits and like tracking shots. And there's like one where the alien is scurrying across this tunnel, and the camera like rotates upside down. And you can tell that there's like the director, and like Fincher's said this a lot, and a lot of people have said this about him, that like his strength is not in the writing room. His strength is in just like shooting. Like he loves to shoot. I mean, that's easy to say about any director, but I think it's especially the case for Fincher. And he goes at it very technically and uniquely.
Has he ever entered the writing room? Just like because I'm just thinking.
I think he had to do some in this movie and never went fucking back. Like,
yeah, because it's on the fly, right? So like, yeah, maybe, yeah.
And if you think about it, a lot of, and this is not like to like besmirch him at all, but like a lot of his movies that he's gone with, he works with writers that know what the fuck they're doing, like Aaron Sorkin, and like very well written out scripts.
God, fucking Aaron Sorkin's a god.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
As far as writers go,
Sorkin's awesome. I forget who wrote Seven, but I don't think it was him. I don't think he wrote The Game, and I know he didn't write Fight Club.
Well, that was based off of Chuck Palahniuk's novel. I think I don't know if he actually wrote a script for that, but yeah.
I've not read Fight Club, but I have heard from people that have that's one of the instances where the movie is better than the book, or is better than the source material.
I read some of it, so I couldn't say ultimately, but like, yeah, I mean, yeah, I love the movie. I love the movie enough to go read the book, so yeah, that's probably testament to its quality, maybe. So
yeah,
and ultimately he made a sequel in comic book form that he ultimately decided to kind of go more with the movie's plot than his own for the original novel. So that's kind of telling as well, maybe,
right. Like if you were to grade like attributes, like in a video game or whatever, where you have like speed, accuracy, strength,
RPG,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, or whatever. Like
Fincher's gonna be like way the fuck up there.
Yeah, Fincher would have like framing, editing, lighting, working with actors, like all those would be A+, and then like I feel like the writing would be kind of like C+. plus, you know,
Well,
or
you know,
like NA, you know.
right. Well, he's made some great films with some pretty solid plots. I mean, you know, the girl with the dragon tattoo is fairly complicated. Like, right? I mean,
I
it's based on
suppose he
novels.
has great taste in writing, which is, as a
Yeah,
director, can be its
that's
own
smart.
skill, you
Right.
know.
To be like, okay, I know my strengths. I'm going to lean into somebody else's, and then hopefully combine, we're going to make something that's fucking great. You know, Gone Girl.
Yeah.
Like he seemed to really attach himself to Gillian Flynn for a while because he wanted to do an adaptation of Utopia, which I you can go watch Utopia. Go not the actual Gillian Flynn American version. Watch the UK version on Channel 4. It's fucking great. It's one of the greatest fucking shows ever made. I just
What's
have
that
too much
available
time.
on?
It's
Tell it to the
on
people.
Prime right now. You can watch the original UK version. It's fucking actually right now it's not the most topical film because there's a pandemic and there's it's very okay right now. It might be a very controversial show, but it's one of my absolute goddamn favorites of all time, the UK version. I only watched the pilot of the American version. It like doesn't really touch it, but he wanted to develop that on HBO with Gillian Flynn. He dropped out. Gillian Flynn stayed attached, and she did a adaptation for Amazon. But they offer currently, we're in 2020, 1210, you know, the original Channel 4 version, which got canceled prematurely, but has a definitive enough conclusion where you can kind of see where it's going to go. I fucking love that show. I'm sorry, it's like up there with Breaking Bad for me. I fucking love that show. I can't talk about it enough. So
Okay,
I
I
just
did
want to
not
shout out.
hear enough about that to really get into it, but I'll look into it.
But yeah, no, he was going to do it on HBO, and I was excited then, and then that dropped off, and then out of the blue, Amazon's like, oh yeah, but Gillian Flynn's still attached, and we're doing it now. So I was like, it's just not as good. I can only imagine if he had directed this, he sounded like he understood what it was about, and I think if he had been director, it might have been comparable, maybe, you know, but they canceled it after one fucking season. The hope was really that they would, sort of like Stephen King's Kingdom Hospital with Lars von Trier for Kingdom, that it would go past that point where it got canceled, and you know, and that was the hope. But yeah, no, it got canceled after one season, our American version. So
They made a good decision getting Charles Dance in there. Charles Dance is good at what he does. And
very unrecognized at the time, even unrecognized kind of now. If you've noticed, like he got casted in cast in Underworld Awakening, and then I think the sequel to that. He was in Game of Thrones as well, and he's in Rome, and he's in a lot of things, but character actor sort of.
he
The
could
Idiot
does he do
Uncle.
any voice acting? He could do a lot of voice acting.
Uh, Actually, that's interesting. I think that of so many actors, I'm like, dude, you know,
I
but
don't know, but he's so
Charles Dance
theater
could
though, it
do it.
might be beneath him. Like,
Yeah, right.
and when he's
It's
in
starting to become a
movies,
little
like
more mainstream. But
he's kind of typecasted though in movies, because I feel like you mentioned with Underworld, like it's just where it's like a modern B
oh,
movie
you mean
type.
Dance? Yeah. The only okay, so he's done voice work. That's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, Dance.
The Witcher 3, which is
Okay.
totally because of Game of Thrones. And then he did a audiobook version I've been trying to hunt down for fucking ever. Like it must only exist on cassette for the Fourth Protocol, which was the same author as you know those espionage thrillers as the Day of the Jackal. And I've been trying to fucking find that thing forever, you know, like because I'm like, hey, I mean I want to read it anyway, but then Charles Dance doing an audio version, I'm like, I gotta listen to that. So that's all I know of though. It's just Witcher 3 and that. So, you know, but he's fucking great. Yeah, he could do audio.
Yeah, and he
So
tries to get typecast. They typecast seem to typecast him as like B movie fantasy villain. Like, fuck
right.
it, we need a vampire, we need a
Brad
warlock.
Dourif.
Okay, so this happened before he really got typecasted as a villain or whatever, because
And yeah, kind of Game
this
of
was one
Thrones.
of
Even
his first
yeah.
like feature films, and they played him as like the good guy, like the well-meaning like prisoner type that's kind of got a dark side but has proven
In
nothing but
Alien 3.
trust to
Yeah.
Ripley, you know what I mean? Like that's a rare dynamic you get in movies where it's like, all right, I shouldn't trust this person, but they've only been trustworthy so far.
I think they were setting Charles Dance up to be much more like you don't know if you can trust him or not or what. And that's in the theatrical cut. I think in the assembly cut, it's a lot more subtle. And there's still that element, but it's not in your face. Like you ultimately, I think, trust him a lot more in the assembly cut. In the theatrical cut, I think you're set up to distrust him. I think it just ultimately lends itself to being a more confusing movie than is necessary, because I think the average audience member is going to be confused by the accents, by a sort of an overload of information. Like in the theatrical cut, you have Dance sort of half-assedly giving exposition on like the nature of this sort of cult that's formed within the prison system, and but it's like, you've been here as long as they have, as far as we can tell. Like he says this formed 5 years ago, and it's like he's like, I don't know, it's just sort of, it's like a Christian sort of, it's fucking weird, right? And like, so yeah, that's how we the audience feel, but like, you've been here, you should have a little bit more of a understanding of like what it is exactly that they believe in. I think the script keeps their belief system intentionally nebulous, one, because it's a half-ass rush script, but I do think that there's an unintentional benefit of that. It's something I wanted to touch on, is of that is that you get to, I'm not going to say it's a total pro, but you get to, as opposed to a con, but you get to project your, sort of themes and stuff onto whatever it is they believe, because it's so broad. It's like, there's the dragon and that's bad, and here's redemption in a really nebulous sense, and that's, you can kind of tie that to like Ripley's survivor guilt and whatever, so it's not very well defined, but that's, and that's certainly something I felt even on my initial viewing, is especially on my initial viewing, is that these are really ill-defined themes. They're just super broad, and I think unless you can tie it down a bit, it's just something you kind of project an arc onto, and that's not great, but you can still do it. I think, like you said, there's maternal themes established in previous films that you could, bring into Alien 3 and whatnot. So
there was another character too that's like priest type among this prison colony. Dylan, played by Charles Dutton. I mean, he was pretty solid the majority of the film too. A lot of the characters' motivations, it kind of seemed like a plot device character, just the way he got written up.
I was very impressed with his acting, actually. Yeah, especially on repeat viewings. Like once the chaos is kind of settled, you really do learn to appreciate. But this is when was the last time you watched Alien 3? Because like for me, it's been a little while.
Probably like 2011 or 12.
Jesus. Okay. All right. It's longer than me, because I'm in the fucking absolute minority in terms of kind of liking it, so I do it every now and then. But yeah.
Well,
we get always the assembly cut. So.
Yeah. Like whenever I got the Alien collection box, I thought another interesting thing is, okay, so you have Alien. Alien is a horror movie. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Alien 1979.
That's how I felt. Yeah.
Is a horror movie. Aliens 1986 is an action movie. It is an action movie.
Horror, but action first and foremost. Yeah.
It kind of felt like so much of Alien 3 we're a melodrama. Like, we're talking about how we found God after like being thrown in prison, and like it's kind of like the soap opera version of Alien. Where do you place Alien 3 as like a genre? Because I feel like it's not as much of an action movie as Aliens.
The Dostoevsky of cinema. I know, it's just like absolutely depressing as shit. It is. It would be easy to say something. I find myself in a really weird position, because it'd be easy to say something like, it is how you don't do a movie a sequel. I don't feel that's entirely true.
But at the same time, you respect it. Like, this is not how you make money, but this is how you earn my respect.
It's so how you don't do it. What's really fucking ironic is that this was so heavily fucking pawed by studio execs. Like they produced the most not marketable movie of all fucking time.
And
Like,
then the
Alien
execs
3.
started writing it too, like
Yeah.
because they had to fire everyone else. But one thing is we got to talk about a little more about the first draft of this script. The first draft, they explained it as like almost like a spaceship that's like almost the size of a planet, and they decorate it with wood, like
There's some
very like
Australian dude. It was a wooden planet, right?
yeah, it was like a wooden planet, and it had an atmosphere that was like 2 feet. And like every physics professor, every like physics troll or professor or whatever
Yeah.
is just like, this is the worst bullshit ever. Like you can't have like an atmosphere. Where the fuck did they get the trees? It
Right.
seemed far
Wooden
out
Death Star.
there.
Yeah.
And that's the surprise, and tying it back into the point you just made about the producers. How is that the script where you're like, fuck yeah, let's get rolling? That
Right, yeah,
like
that was the initial script, wasn't it? That was the first fucking draft. 'Cause I remember one of the producers watched the movie, a period piece. I think it was like a Dark Ages thing that this Australian director had done. I haven't seen it. I don't even know what the fucking title is. They're like, this is great. It's got like gothic themes, and then they went, do whatever you want. And then he's like, Wooden Planet. And it sounds ridiculous, but then like seeing some of the concept art, the interior, fine. Like if you want the majority of the interior to be wooden, that could be actually kind of interesting. But one of the things I remember writing was that it would stray heavily from the look of Alien. I think that it's easy to look at Alien 3 and think this looks completely different, but I think there are consistencies that I'd like to highlight later on that really do tie it to the rest of Alien, so it's not as different as I think people think. But yeah, like a whole wooden planet would be very different, and
yeah, the
and
production
but also completely infeasible, but very different visually.
the production design as is, I think, is something that was like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Because like the production design is so good in Alien and Aliens by forget how you say his name, but it's like Gager
Oh, it's the
or
same guy.
the guy that's done all the concept art for Alien. It's like
For the aliens themselves, it'd be HR, or is it HG Geiger?
Geiger. Yep. Okay,
Yeah.
so like
He just does the alien concept. I don't even know if he can continued past Alien 1 or 2.
he worked on Alien 3. Like they sent
Really?
they asked him requests of like, what would an alien look like if it had come from a dog? What would it look like if it had come from a bovine? Because
You want to talk about that for just a second? Because
replicate some traits. Yep. Yeah, let's go on that.
Yeah, because this is the first Alien, and I don't know if this is from watching the documentary or something, but it was pointed out that this is the first Alien where it confirms that the alien adjusts itself to whatever the host is. So in this case, it runs on all fours.
But yeah, so like that's kind of why like in Prometheus and Alien Covenant, there's like talk of like the way they talk about the alien is like a perfect creature, or everyone talks about it as like
organism.
perfect organism.
It's always referred to as the perfect organism.
I think the idea about it too is always like the marriage of that organism with humans, because it can take up so many things, but like it can take up a lot of animals. Like you can have a dog alien and this alien and that alien, but I feel like if you have a human alien, you know what I mean? Like it's an intelligent being,
right?
So it's like kind of like exponentially more powerful, or like more calculating.
So I mean, I feel like it's cheating to refer to Ridley Scott's prequels after the fact, But I mean, I'll still refer to them, but I don't think it excuses the film ultimately. This came out in '92, and you have Prometheus in 2010. Which didn't you take us all to? Like I think the first time I saw Prometheus,
I took a few people to it. Yeah, I bet I took you and Josh. I don't know. I enjoyed Prometheus. I didn't like love it nearly as much as like the first two Alien movies, of course.
No, but yeah, there are logical inconsistencies, but overall, yeah,
I liked it for what it was. I don't know how I feel about the Prometheus trilogy, if that's what they're going to be making it as.
Right. I know he wants to do. It's really fucking bizarre what Scott wants to do, because he's like he wants to do a movie called It's Awakening, I think, and then he wants to make it in interquel, so it takes place between Prometheus and Covenant, explaining everything somehow after the fact, but in between
See, that's
chronologically.
what I see. Like, why? I don't know how we actually got on a Prometheus. But is there like points that you still want to make about like the
Oh
creation or like the organism
yeah.
itself?
Yeah, so okay, so as far as I can tell, and correct me if I'm wrong, but so I'm trying to go like release order. In the William Gibson script, I remember he starts to talk about how highly modifiable the xenomorph's genetic material is, and that's never anything that obviously makes into the final cut of Alien, but it's where they start to explore that idea that it's like almost made to be modified. I know from like almost the start, Ridley Scott really wanted to talk about the origin of the alien. I never thought that was an avenue that needed to be explored, but again, I'll save that for later. But I feel like actually he might almost have been completely right about going that way. Uh, I didn't like it at first, though. I was like, who the fuck cares? Who wants to know that? Like, it's creepy because you don't know. Like, the things that go unanswered are the unknown, and the unknown is creepy. And so explaining things makes it less frightening. And that's kind of how I felt about it. But actually, I think that it ties together very well. But they seemed hell bent on finally like combining alien DNA with human DNA, which they've already done since the very start, at least as confirmed by Alien 3, where we see it combined with a dog or a cow. Like we've been doing that from the start then. Like, so it's not very special, but you see concept art and they're like it's vaguely humanoid, and then you ultimately have that culminate in Alien Resurrection where you have the baby alien, human alien. But yeah, so like I think it's something that they were playing with, and you can see that in the concept art early on. That's all I wanted to establish, is that this was an idea that started to gestate with Alien 3. Is to
So
really, like, kind of like Jurassic World, they always wanted to make, and I followed that movie. It went through development hell, and everything they put forth was like Turok Evolution, which is a video game based on a comic book, but that where they wanted to meld the dinosaurs with humans. I'm like, that's the dumbest fucking shit ever. And ultimately, they went with the second dumbest most shit fucking ever, which is weaponizing the dinosaurs. But like so. But Alien 3, you can see that idea start, which is aliens and humans melding, the xenomorphs and, right. So, yeah, that's
so
all I
one
want to say. Sorry, it's a really long way of saying it.
so one thing that's different in Alien 3 is I feel like the AI, like I feel like that artificial intelligence theme took a back seat in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like there literally aren't really androids other than the one that like they bring Bishop back for like 15 seconds and then he's like, I want to die. Um but I've
I
always
don't want to be in this movie.
like the AI theme has always been kind of not delved into by the movies as much. Like they've always got more and more onto the creature, more and more into the creature.
With
But
Scott, that seems to be his focus, Ridley. But I mean, but yeah, otherwise,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
no,
like it's like creature origin, creature
right.
origin. But has anybody ever thought like why the AI wants the alien? Like, could it be like now they couldn't do this with an android like Bishop, obviously, but couldn't it be that like the alien could implant an egg into a piece of AI somehow, whether it's an android or something else, and then that be some sort of like doomsday creature or even more perfect being, you know what
I
I
didn't
mean,
fucking think about
where it's not half alien half human, and it's not half alien half dog, it's half alien half AI.
that's fucking weird. Yeah, because there's
I
always been
mean,
this.
that would be fresh
No,
as shit though. Like
That's something. So they always bring up like how the alien is sort of like a biomechanoid creature, and I've never really sensed that. It always feels organic to me, ultimately, you know. But yeah,
Yeah,
no, like
I mean
if
it's
that's
organic, but how evolved is the AI in this world? Like it could be way more involved than Bishop, because I mean how like I don't know. I feel like that's like an area that they could delve way more into rather than like the kind of backtracking that Prometheus does, where it's like,
well, especially
what if there's literally like an AI war where like there are some that are more like Bishop that's like, nah, fuck, we're humanist. And then there are some that are like, nah, fuck you, we want the alien DNA and we're gonna create a perfect fucking being and control everything.
which being created by an AI, as Ridley Scott likes to explain. I mean, he's really focused on the AI stuff. I'm sure you've heard him say, but like that would really kind of work out, you know, where it's
I
like
mean,
maybe
Ridley,
so
if you're
it's kind
watching this, I
of
mean, I'm gonna serve this up to you, but a
good.
story credit would be great.
No, that's the thing. I feel like he compromised his vision too much with Covenant, where like he was like he wanted to do a direct follow up to Prometheus, and then he's like, but people want aliens, so he makes Alien Covenant, and people are like, it's not scary, and he's like, well, I didn't really want to do aliens, I wanted to do the AI stuff. It's like, dude, just make the fucking trilogy you want to make. All right, like it's how I kind of feel. So, but that's what he wants to do. He wants to talk about the AI. I remember when it was Alien um, Paradise Lost after the well, you know, the classical piece, you know,
Yep.
Paradise Lost, but I can't think of it. Um, the author, but you know, but the themes totally line up, and like it was, you know, he really seemed interested in the David character. I feel like that's the route he should have went. So that totally lines up with like he was even talking about some kind of war breaking out between I don't know if it was the engineers and humans or what, but like that David had orchestrated, and that was kind of his plan for awakening. So I don't know if it's gonna be like a Hateful Eight thing where he actually follows up on that even after explaining to the audience like what his plans were, or if he's just gonna totally change it again.
But yeah,
It's
Alien 3, I felt like the death scene would have been good if the special features were just even a little good for even the time those special features were not good at the end. Like she kind of like just kept
special
getting
effects, you mean?
special effects. Yeah. She kind of just kept getting smaller and smaller when really they should
I
have just
remember,
showed
yeah.
her get enveloped by the flames rather than be like, "Oh, is she falling for literally like a Looney Tunes level of height here?" Where she's just like,
This is the thing I always run into is you know, what was the resolution that this film was meant to be viewed in? And it's like, okay, if you're watching on like a CRT, but I mean, okay, actually, no, that's not fair because you know what? You're looking at on a big fucking movie theater screen. That's always been, right? That's your first viewing. People are going to see it on a big ass screen. Yeah, you're right. You know, so yeah, it
it could
doesn't hold
look
up.
good in
I
like
know
an
they said it was
IMAX
rushed, but yeah,
cut
it's still,
type deal. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe on some CRT, but even looking at it now, yeah, it doesn't quite work. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And
So, and that's the most important moment. It has to, if any of the fucking effects, yeah, I'm sorry, I just took a second to
yeah,
catch
it's the
up, but
most important moment. So like
that's
it
the one that needs
matters.
to work. Yeah.
I don't think we're either of us are sticklers for bad special effects or even like
No,
like underwhelming or bad special effects. But when you have, I know they're going over budget and they were late on like
right.
stuff and they were rushed and they were hurried and everything. But like
Yeah, I don't know
it
where it came
is
in that she has to
the
die, but wherever that
one
was,
you
you
want
didn't
to look
realize it. Budget.
good. Like
Right. Yeah, yeah. So no, absolutely, yeah, yeah. That's one thing I can't give it a pass on. It's like it still resonates, it still works, but Jesus fucking Christ, if there was any part to give your budget to, because there are other scenes that don't quite look phenomenal, but like you know, if you needed to prioritize a scene, yeah, it's that one.
Alien 3 really got sandwiched in between two like all-time special effects features where if you think of
Me
like the
too. Yeah,
history of special effects, you go like 2001 and then that made Star Wars and
yeah.
then that led
That's what
to like Back to the Future, Indiana Jones, Terminator, Alien, and then you get to the 90s where it's 91 Terminator 2
T2.
Judgment Day, one of the biggest like special
It,
effects like
right.
movies ever. and then Alien
Right.
3, it is what it is, and then Jurassic Park, which is like the next step.
At the start of the film, I would say that that crash should have fucking killed them, right? Like, because there's no parachutes. There's like, I mean, there's nothing. They just crash into the fucking ocean. I mean, I know that we do water landings nowadays.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously with
they were a
parachute.
comet. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Depends how fast they were going, I suppose, how much speed they had going
but there's
in
no, they're
space.
not floating. I mean, we see the ass end of the ship sticking out, but it's not bobbing. It's like it's only because it's hit the ocean surface. Like it's, you know. So I mean, unless
I
don't
would have
know.
liked to see the Alien 3 movie that's just like that thing lands and it's going at such a high rate of speed that it evaporates the small body of water and then everyone dies.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like just like a meteor, just
Yeah, fuck it. It's Alien 3. Everybody dies horribly. Just kick off the movie. Oh, yeah. So Ripley washes up on the shore in the assembly cut. I love that shot. It's a beautiful fucking shot. She's covered in oil. She's like, I mean, but to me, that means that Ripley abandoned ship, basically. It means she left Newt to drown, Hicks to die. Like I know that she's in the, I mean, she's a survivor. That's who she is. But it's actually something that I'd almost consider a detracting factor to the assembly cut when I try to tie it into the larger themes of being a survivor and all that. Because, well, I mean, it works, but it does ultimately mean that the first thing in her mind was getting away from the ship, getting to shore. Unless by some goddamn happy accident, she left her cryo tube and then drifted to shore, like all unconscious. You know, otherwise, it means she did abandon everybody without thinking. I mean, which
I think in the
could fault her for.
Yeah, I think in the theatrical, like they did just pull her out and pull the dead bodies out too, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like
Right,
that, like
but
that's
yeah,
one
in
where
the
the
assembly,
like
she watches stuff on shore. It's a beautiful shot, but it seems coming.
I think in the assembly they just wanted to show that shot.
That's another thing. The assembly seems to want to show the alternate original shots rather than maybe what is best for the film overall. Because I feel like there are elements from the theatrical that if you reworked, like I prefer it coming from a dog than the cow. You know, I think it's more disturbing because that dog has all those gashes on its face. It's upsetting. The cow, you
Yeah.
don't give a fuck. It's already dead. You eat cows, you know.
Yeah.
But there was some bad acting in that scene, like you know. But like, I think maybe you could have worked around it and still kept the dog. You know, I mean, it also when you think of something that runs on all fours, you think of a dog before you think of a cow. You know, it's another thing. So you know, I mean, yeah, I think they were really determined to show things that you haven't seen rather than rework it in a way that really works best.
Maybe if you watch them back to back, your mind like does one of these, like, and like it just becomes a much better movie. It's like it's like in a 3D glasses, you have the red lens and the blue lens and together.
Right. I would say watch the assembly cut first. Like if you've never watched these movies before, watch Assembly. You're not going to understand why everybody fucking hated Alien 3, but you're going to get the best experience. And then go back to the theatrical, and then you'll have the perspective you need to understand why people fucking hate this film. So, but I think that to enjoy the series, you need to watch the Assembly. It's really, I know, and I don't blame people for not liking it because it's basically a bunch of producers who fucked up the film in the first place, coming back together and unfucking the film. And it's like there's not really a bravo, that is due to them. It does work a lot better. It's surprisingly nuanced. Like they just understand the scenes that need a moment to breathe. They don't use the Elliot Goldenthal or is it Golden Smith, whatever the fucking score nearly as much. When they use it, it has punctuation, you know? And they let scenes play out. They don't tell you how to feel it. Like, yeah, this is what I really want to say about the difference between the two. Like, instead of nitpicking the actual details of it, the things that make the assembly work above the theatrical would be the way they utilize the score and the editing. You know, it's so much more nuanced in the assembly. You know, they let scenes breathe. They don't use the score too much, you know, and when they do, it has punctuation and above all else, they don't tell you how to feel. They let you feel it. They let a scene play out. Scenes are longer. They don't go, ooh, dun, dun, dun. You know, they don't do any of that fucking shit. It's horrific inherently. Watching Newt, who you've grown to watch, you know, be dissected is inherently horrible. You don't need to be told by a musical cue that's fucking awful, you know? I mean, the sound effects are awful enough, but then the music, I mean, like, it's just a lot smarter in its utilization of editing techniques and musical cues. So absolutely, I think that more than anything, that's a differentiating factor. So I think
Yeah,
that sums it up.
I agree completely. Like I haven't seen the
In a while, but
updated
yeah,
version, but I could imagine that like if like the musical cues make a little more sense, that like
right.
I see where you're coming from there.
Yeah, see, I mean, scenes, yeah, the scenes are different between the two cuts. They tend to be a little, like, again, the assembly gives them time to breathe, but more than anything, it's not a difference between the dog and the cow or anything like that. It's really just being smart. You know that they think this is terrible, and you just let them feel that rather than telling them through a musical cue or editing techniques that, oh, dun dun dun, Hicks is dead. Holy shit. Dun dun dun. Newt's dead too. Holy fuck. Da, da, da. You know, Bishop's dead. It's like it's just in your face, back to back. Like, here's how we're trying to shock you, and I think it's more shocking to let it just play out naturally. You know.
Part of that benefit too is that you did have a cast of like theater people, like hardcore theater people, because like Dutton is, Dance is, Weaver actually does a lot. Like, not saying that like John Hurt or whatever hasn't done theater or anything like that, but like a lot
Right.
of that cast were like movie actors. Alien
But
3
it
is
feels
like,
like the studio doesn't know what to do with them. So they're doing their goddamn utmost, but the studio doesn't know what the fuck to do with them. You know.
and like
So
one of the people on the special features said like the cast is like more fit to do like Shakespeare almost than a
mhm.
sci-fi.
I think that was Dan. Yeah, he had like respect for his fellow Shakespearean actors. Yeah. Isn't the criteria for being a Shakespearean actor that you have to like go around for a whole fucking year and speak with that fucking accent? Like, you go to the fucking I don't know if I
Like,
heard,
it's
I don't know if
crazy
this is true.
you're a good actor doing Shakespeare, and then there's, oh, you're
Mm.
Kenneth Branagh doing Shakespeare.
Well, no, and I think of Stewart and Ian McKellen, and they're Shakespearean actors as well, probably the better known, but
True.
right. So Um, but yeah, no, it's definitely another level, and they're approaching it from a very different level. But the studios, I mean, it's easy to blame everything on the studio, but I think in this case, if ever, it would be, yeah, the studio really fucked this one up. And ultimately, like I said, I think it's something I didn't even think about before we started talking about, but they produced the most studio unfriendly movie ever fucking made with this one. Like, with all their interference and meddling, it is the most not commercial film I've ever fucking seen, which is really something that I think is absolutely phenomenal. So, yeah,
And it's still probably
God,
the most commercial draft.
really, you think so? Because
Well,
I mean, the Gibson.
the original draft wouldn't have made money.
Yeah, a lot of interesting things came out of Alien 3, when you think about it. But ultimately, yeah, what we got was a really weird fucking movie.
It's
So
an educational failure is what it
yeah,
is.
right. Alien 3 might not be what you want to do plot wise, but it does stay faithful to the Ripley character. There are two things that I really respect Alien for, and it's across the board. But it chose to maintain the perspective of the of Ripley, and it didn't have to do that. Like, you could easily break away. Like, the earlier Gibson script wanted to focus on Hicks and Newt and some new characters. And there's plenty of room to do that, but ultimately it decided to kind of go with this idea that Ripley and the alien are inseparable. And I think there's this line in Alien 3. There is a scene where she said, "You've been with me so long, I can't remember anything else." And I was like, that they're inseparable. And so, like, yeah, you could go with like kind of the cop out of like, okay, well, they weren't the first to visit LV. Hang on, I have this written down. 426. I always forget the fucking number because there's like two LVs. There's the one from Prometheus, but but you know, and then like somebody else picked up the alien and they went to another colony, and you know, like, and you have an outbreak somewhere else, somewhere in between the events of Alien 3 and Resurrection, but it doesn't, I mean, you have that stuff with like the comics and whatever. I don't know. But as far as the filmography, like it maintains its perspective on Ripley. Like the idea is that these two are inseparable. And the only break is with Ridley Scott's prequel trilogy. But again, I feel like you get away with that because you're literally talking about the creation of the alien. You know, it's like God's relation to man, I guess, or something. You know, like I feel like that's a perspective that's high enough that you can break perspective, you know, from Ripley, and then ultimately it leads into the events of Alien, and the aliens are ultimately extinguished, even if you consider Resurrection. As far as we know, they died with the events of Resurrection, you know. So it's like, I think keeping that perspective, and that if you view Alien 3 that way, it works a lot better than if you think of like, you know, this is just an action series and we can make as many sequels as we want. But if you follow Ripley and you think about like what's logical, and this is kind of, I like watching the documentary stuff. I feel like they kind of alluded to this. I don't remember if they touched upon it directly, but the kind of the idea is like, what are the odds? Like, what are the odds that this one person keeps experiencing these events over and over, you know, and there's another outbreak and there's another outbreak and there's another outbreak. So to me, Alien 3 feels like a very fucking harsh reality about the survivor that no longer survives. You know, like, and that's everybody. Like, so when we think of survivors, we're like, you know, we applaud that, but everybody dies, right? And so I think Alien 3, and this is what a lot of people have kind of come out and said, is kind of a contemplation on facing the inevitable death, you know. And so the thing for Ripley to do now, like giving up is the thing she has to do. It's not, you know, I mean, she's lost a daughter figure in, well, her actual daughter. If you watch the James Cameron cut of Aliens, she's lost Newt by the time you get to Alien 3. And you have this sick fucking twisted mockery of a daughter in her chest cavity, you know. And I think Call in Resurrection kind of serves as maybe a surrogate daughter figure, but whatever. You have a character that it's no, in order to do what is best, she has to die. It's about accepting death, and that's ultimately, it's no longer about just surviving this thing. You have to accept your end to be rid of it. And I think she understands that these two things are completely intertwined. Her life is the life of this species. I'm not articulating it very well, but if like I had to really strike at the core of what I think Alien 3 is about, it does seem like, it does almost seem logical. It feels, I mean, it's gonna fuck people. Yeah, go ahead.
It makes sense, man. Like, yeah, I think you're 100% right. Like, it's not about being able to keep going on in spite of everything. It's about like this ultimate survivor is basically put in the situation where for the good of everybody, you have to let go.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that removes some of the tension. Obviously, having a protagonist that, you know, as you learn because of the chest burster, or, you know, the alien won't attack her, and I think that removes some of the tension. But I think that's interesting to explore thematically, because it's like, why would you do that? You know, unless you really want the audience. Okay, I'm not going to pretend they're geniuses or anything. I think it was just a chaotic fucking production. But if you look at the film, on, you know, like, I mean, maybe, I don't know, but it does kind of work on that fucking level where like it's no longer about tension. It's about facing death. I mean, that the movie does become about that. Its themes loosely explore that. They're not really coherent. They're nebulous. It's kind of ironic coming from me, but
one thing I noticed in the movie was, I don't know, like they killed Charles Dance off like too quick. The Ripley character can more than carry more than carry the movie. It's just after Dance's character died, every supporting character was not as interesting. Like there was like more scenes with the warden and shit, and it's like, like I don't know, like
who gets killed off suddenly for shock value. Yeah. this is another thing. It's kind of, I don't know, but like Alien 3 is a goddamn prime example. And a lot of this started to come up in the 90s when you think about like William Peter Blatty's Exorcist 3 and all that. Studio interference. So this is a case against studio interference. But now like you look at Game of Thrones, you look at some of the things that have come out, Last Jedi. I don't know how much studio interference was a factor, but there's definitely like Ryan Johnson's marks on that. I think there's kind of a strong case made nowadays against the auteur, but I think it's important to remember something like Alien 3, which makes a very strong case against studio interference. So I don't know what the sweet in between is, but here's one extreme. And Game of Thrones' ending is the yellow extreme.
I think Star Wars does show you the extremes, because like the prequels are almost like, okay, you gave him too much power, he lost his fastball. And like,
he was such a yes man, it sounds like. He just fucking went with everything. But I don't know. I mean, other things he seemed insistent on, like really dumb ideas, like Darth Maniacalus or some like stupid names and shit. I don't know. It's a mess. But yeah.
And then you have the sequels, which almost seems like too many cooks in the kitchen, like too many different directors. Nobody like ever like tied anything together. That is for another day.
3, the takeaway would be this is the example of studio interference. But the more I think about it, it's also not because they produced, again, like I said, and it's only occurred to me once we started to do this, a very uncommercial film. It's the most depressing fucking sequel ever made. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking.
Like I don't know. That's like, they had a horror movie, they had an action movie, and then a melodrama. I wonder what and that would Revolution actually be the comedy? Did they hit all the bases?
With Resurrection, they did. They went all the way, because that was a big thing in the 90s, I hated it. I fucking hated it. Like, it was clever at first, but they did the self-referential, self-aware horror film with all the major franchises like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, and they all became very self-aware and they parodied themselves. Scream was.
So if all of those movies go to space when they're truly bad, like Leprechaun in space, Chucky in space,
Hellraiser 4 went to space.
Does the Alien series go back to Earth when they're done?
In 4, yes, they do. Joss Whedon takes them back to Earth. There was supposed to be a whole
I don't think I've seen Resurrection to completion. I know
that's okay.
I think I saw like the first half hour and the last half hour, because I remember air pressure gets sucked through.
Thank you. Okay, so Alien 3, it feels like they're like, okay, who's our antagonist? The antagonist is the alien, but it's within her. We can't see it. So and then there's the external alien, which we've killed. So like, who's the antagonist? We need to put a face to all this, and they bring in Lance Henriksen as Bishop, but he's not Bishop. He's the creator of Bishop. He works for Weyland-Yutani. He's the company man, like kind of like Burke. Or it feels very tacked on, even in the assembly cut. Upon repeat viewings, it feels more natural, but on that first viewing, like I said, which I had a few years ago, and I went back to the assembly cut, not the theatrical, it still felt stitched together, and it just feels like they're like trying to figure out who's the antagonist. We need to put a face to, this conflict, and it's like, oh, it's Lance Henriksen. But the one thing I can say in defense of Alien 3 is the ending really works if you consider Resurrection, because then they use Ripley's blood samples. I don't know if she's wounded. I think she is at the end of Alien 3. So they use the blood samples to reconstruct her for Resurrection. Resurrection might not work as a film, but it validates that ending at least. I'm not talking about her sacrificing herself. I feel that works on any level. That feels like, to me, truly the ending of the franchise. It makes sense. But as far as bringing in Lance Henriksen and all that, the science team and all that, it just feels tacked on unless you think about Resurrection. And that's like, okay, actually that kind of makes sense, because they need to get these samples, and that justifies a whole fourth film, so that was almost smart. yeah, I feel like you can appreciate Alien 3 on that level as well. Like the ending might feel tacked on, but if you think about Resurrection, it works there. Also, the title of Resurrection kind of continues the religious themes of 3, not really beyond that, but just in the title. She is resurrected,
Yeah,
so
that's
like, I
true.
mean,
Like she had
yeah,
her Jesus moment.
yeah, she
Uh,
falls in,
it
it's a
would
crucifix kind of falls.
would it have been interesting if like they were able to surgically remove the alien from her chest safely, and then they kind of like put it on ice, and then
They
they
kind
had
of
the
do that in
whole
Resurrection, but it
they
doesn't
did
really make sense. But yeah,
okay. Well, in Alien 3, it could work if like they take it out and like
that's what Bishop proposes. So I don't mean to cut you.
and
He's like, I'll put you on ice. And we'll cut you out. It'll be good to go. And so there's the temptation. It's like the temptation of Christ. Like you get off scot free. We're gonna destroy it, Ripley. I can't think of any, because when you think about the alien, it's a parasite, right? So I can't think of any parasite that, like a bodfly or whatever, that implants itself in the host and carries its genetic material over to the host itself. Like, because that's a plot of Resurrection, is that they bring her back and there's both alien and human DNA interspliced. And so this is, I remember saying at the beginning that I want to revisit this point, so I'll try to keep it brief, but it was what I wanted to talk about was in the William Gibson script. It's the first version that I can think of for Alien 3, the script, I think it's one of the earlier ones, where he talks about, like, hey, look at this. The alien DNA is highly adaptable. You can splice it with like fucking anything. It's like highly, moldable. You can, and then obviously Ridley explores that with his prequel versions, which he wanted to do for like fucking ever, but with the black goo and all that shit. But as far as I can tell, the Gibson script is the first version that really addresses the genetic material of the alien. So, but yeah, like, so with Alien 3, like they say that they collect blood samples. The scientists, the science team at the end of 3 collects blood samples from Ripley. That her DNA is mixed with the aliens, and they clone her from that, and then they produce a perfect clone with an alien still in her chest cavity, which I don't know, that really fucking makes sense. So I tried to look it up, and like the only thing I could really find is, I mean, I know there are ants that carry the genetic material of previous mates, to their offspring. So you have like 10 daddies for an ant or some fucked up shit. And then the only other, which is fucked up to think about, but then you have fruit flies or whatever, and the Wolbachia or whatever, which is like a bacteria from that infects fruit flies, will actually carry down to their offspring. But at the end of it, it's all a complicated way of saying, I don't know what the fuck. I've never seen any goddamn example of this in nature, where the parasitic host actually infects the DNA of, the parasite infects the DNA of the host to such a degree that like Ripley has alien blood, acid coursing through her veins, even if it's a mild acid in Resurrection. But science be damned. Alien 3 works if you can, if you want to go right into Resurrection, because then that science team being on site really makes sense. Otherwise, it feels tacked on. And I guess that's what I wanted to say for the ending. Like for me, I'm like, okay, why are you bringing in Bishop? What the fuck? Like, I mean, who's Bishop in the grand scheme of things? The creator of Bishop? It doesn't really fucking matter. But if you want to go into Resurrection, it works a lot better. So that's all. It feels tacked on though. If you're not, fuck Resurrection. Like if you're watching this linearly for the first time, but I'm trying to justify the ending a little bit. There's a clear halfway point. Like I think a lot of people look at Alien 3 and they're like, this is the clear divide, where Alien 1 and 2 are great, Alien 3 and Resurrection are like kind of shit. I thought if you're going to do a really extended version of Alien 3, that would maybe be interesting to have sort of a Lord of the Flies dynamic. But they don't explicitly say it, but like this is kind of a life sentence. This is the ass end of space, which really lends itself to the atmosphere. Like this is hell on earth. It's fire and smoke and
it's barely
ash.
habitable.
Right. So what do they give a fuck? Because they're talking about, we have knives in the kitchen, we have some fire axes around. Like, why don't they use those? Why don't they fuck you up with them? I mean, fuck it. Why not? I mean, they're prisoners, right? They're violent offenders. We hear that they're kept in line by this religion, but like, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like they should have explored it a little more. But ultimately, what I was going to say is that, like, maybe it would have been interesting to explore a tension between Gallic, which is explored a little bit in the assembly cut. It's totally just like they forget about Gallic altogether in the theatrical cut, but to explore sort of a Lord of the Flies dynamic between like Jack and Ralph, where it's like you have somebody indulging their more violent tendencies, which are represented by the alien. And if anybody's killed by the alien, that's part of this like sect of the religion. I think that opposites can really define the source. And so if you look at Alien 3 as a film that's completely opposite of the things that preceded it, it comes to it ultimately makes you appreciate what Alien is about, because like for an example, it's a movie about a survivor, but she doesn't survive Alien 3. And so it really makes you start to think about what Alien was about, by being the opposite of what it was about, but yeah, as far as like Gallic being the opposite of whatever this religion is and indulging his more violent tendencies and kind of regressing. And then you have like Dylan, who's sort of an antithesis to that. He's like the Ralph in Lord of the Flies, and then you have Gallic, who's like sort of like Jack, not quite. But I think that would have been maybe interesting. But ultimately, it doesn't really tie to Ripley, so it's all separate from her. So I don't know if it's essential, but I think the plot kind of has to tie in with Ripley, and I feel like the themes are again very nebulous, and it's kind of hard to make the prisoner's struggle tie it together with Ripley's struggle, other than survivor's guilt is kind of the only connection I can really make. And so she's redeeming herself by ultimately allowing herself to die. The thing that's really interesting about Alien is that it doesn't even set Ripley up to be the sole survivor of the film. Ultimately, she is, and the whole series is defined by that. They commit to that idea. But, as far as I could tell in that, the initial viewing, and I rewatched it most recently in the theater because TCM was doing the Fathom events or whatever, but and it still got some screens, which is really cool to see. But, like you think Dallas is going to be the protagonist, and then like once he dies, it's kind of up for grabs, but you kind of lean more heavily into Ripley. Yeah, like you don't even know Ripley's going to be the sole survivor. It doesn't set it up that way, but then she is, and then you go into Aliens, and ultimately, I guess she's the sole survivor of the events of Aliens because of Alien 3, and then she doesn't survive the events of Alien 3. In fact, there's a line in Alien Resurrection where like Ron Perlman is like, so I heard you went up against these things before, and it's it's a Joss Whedon script, but and he's like, well, so like, what'd you do? And she's like, I died. So like it just does seem kind of like the logical conclusion that it doesn't strain belief, or it just feels like a brutally real film. Like at some point this has to end, and it ultimately ends with her, and they're intertwined. I feel like that's the way that you can appreciate this film the most. Like it could have went with Newton Hicks. It could have separated perspective at any fucking point, but it chooses not to. And I think that's the way you need to look at Alien 3 to appreciate it. It sticks with Ripley and it ends with Ripley. And that's key.
The funny thing is with like between all three of the first movies, Ripley memory time, all three movies are like a week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Again,
because it's like,
I don't like Resurrection, but there's a line where she says, I prefer to dream because whenever the fuck I wake up, I'm paraphrasing, the reality is always worse than the dream. Like just back-to-back nightmare.
The first movie, she, it's probably like the span of a couple days, right? In total, like
24 hours,
like it's space time, so it's like not a human day, like probably close to like 48 hours.
Right.
And then she goes in cryo sleep. She wakes up from cryo sleep and like rehabs for that may have been like a week's worth of rehab.
With Ridley Scott's prequels, I respect them a lot more because the alternative would be, again, exploring the origins. I didn't feel like that was something that was tremendously necessary. I feel like that robs it of the horror. I feel like at the heart of Alien, it is a horror series. People tend to think of Aliens and kind of forget that, but I think they blame the first Alien because Alien 3 is most like the first film. But the alternative to going to the origin of the alien, which is justifiable, because it's like you're going to God, basically. I mean, like if you're gonna break perspective from Ripley, then there's no. It's not just some random miner on some random planet. It's God. It's David. You know that you're breaking perspective for. And the alternative to that is just, like I said, some random planet in between the events of 3 and Resurrection. Somebody else stopped on LV 426 or whatever the fuck and picked up some eggs. And, and there's plenty of stories to be had there, but I think it's really an interesting decision to not go that route and really commit to the perspective of Ripley and only beyond that to the perspective of David. Because, yeah, you have Shaw and you have whatever shorn hair protagonist of Covenant, but it's really about David. So it's really just David, God, and Ripley, who ends his creation ultimately. And I feel like that's kind of poetic. Thinking about Alien 3 and how I can justify it as a picture. I know I'm being redundant, but really it was like, if you view it as, God, they took an action icon, a survivor, and they killed her. They maintained that perspective and they didn't break off. They didn't go with Hicks. They didn't go with they stuck with Ripley, and their two fates are intertwined. And if you view the whole series that way, it really does, I think, work a lot better.
I'm okay with Hicks dying because I don't think the story is very much about him, but you still could have kept Newt around. I think you could have still used that by like, everyone I know dies, so then she's even more afraid that Newt dies. But it doesn't work it doesn't really work for the ending of the movie,
right?
So it probably makes more sense going into the movie if Sigourney Weaver was like, I want to get killed off.
Yeah.
And then it makes logical sense to be like,
Did
all
she
right,
say
well,
that,
we
though?
got to kill off Hicks and Newt too.
What did she say? She wanted to be killed off? Because like,
Yeah, she didn't want to do another one.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, okay, so forget that. And you haven't read the William Gibson script or the Audible or the graphic novel. What would you say? Okay, when you think of Aliens, what would you say the next logical step would be? Like, it would be kind of just a follow up to that, be Hicks and Newt, and that's where a lot of people's frustrations come in. Unless you feel differently, like unless you really think that this is a logical next step.
I don't know. Like, it ran its course. I think they wanted to make it as final as possible. At a certain point, they wanted, after so many rewrites, I think they just wanted to make it as final as possible and be like, let's fucking end it. Let's cut all the loose ends.
But at the same time, there's a lot of life there with the alien. I mean, it's such a unique creature, and there's so many stories that can be told. Like, I understand.
I agree. I'm just thinking about like what they were probably thinking.
No, right, and that's so through that lens, yeah, okay, killing Ripley at the time, but like if you look at it as a story, it's like I get where people are frustrated, and that's why I have trouble overcoming. But yeah, it's like, God, assembly cut's fucking almost great. It's like a 4, like 3.54. Yeah, I mean it's a significant upgrade, but viewed through a certain lens. I mean, to me, it makes sense as an ending. It's very fun. Dying is depressing. And this is a movie about dying. And it's a fucking depressing movie. And Ripley can't live forever. And that's how I look at it. And I know a lot of people don't feel the same way. They feel like they're setting things up with aliens. But okay, Cameron didn't want to return. This is what we got. It started with Ripley. It ends with Ripley. Their fates are intertwined. Yeah, 3.5. I really like it. I encourage people to watch it. It's a deeply flawed film, like another film from the 90s, Event Horizon. Horizon, one of my favorite fucking films, but I'd probably give that the same score, 3.5. I fucking love that movie. Studios meddled with it. Studios fucked it up. British cast, great actors, similar things, lots of gore that was cut out. And I always look for that. Similar things, but yeah, 3.5.
All right. So I have not seen the assembly cut, but I'm giving the theatrical cut the theatrical cut 3 stars. You're giving the assembly 3.5. You're giving the theatrical 2.5.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been great, Dakota. I encourage everybody to hit the like button and subscribe. Everybody should just, have a great day. We're working on sign offs.